All right, so we're going to move on from the Lophotrochozoans to the ecdyzoans. Ecdyzoans? Ecdyzoans. Okay. So the ecdyzoans, for your purposes, you only need to know the nematodes, the roundworms, and the arthropods, which are your insects, spiders, scorpions, millipedes and centipedes. All these in crustaceans. All these hard-shelled, bug-like looking organisms. And what joins them together is that they shed their exoskeletons. So when they grow and grow and grow and they get too big, they will they'll split open their exoskeleton and a new organism will pop out of that. And every single time it grows, it'll crack open its exoskeleton and continue to grow. Yeah. So the first group we'll talk about are the nematodes, roundworms. So the roundworms, they just look like worms. You had two that you need to know: the Ascaris and the vinegar eels. Vinegar eels are really, really small. If you recall, you can see them under a microscope, and that's the way that we looked at them. The Ascaris, those were the ones that were broken open. And so these guys tend to be either parasitic or they just eat detritus in the ground. So their internal body structure is very, very simple. So, and they look kind of like the earthworms, but they don't have segments. So they don't have segments. They just are very smooth. If you remember the Ascaris dissection, just a very simple GI tract and got a big sac of gametes. So they have your gonads containing gametes and your GI tract. And that's pretty much all it is. It's one big sac of a simplified GI tract and a bunch of gonads. So, again, very, very simple because they eat either already pre-digested crap or things that are just like rotting on the floor of the forest floor or bacteria. So they don't really need a specialized gut per se. They have a hydrostatic skeleton. And something really important is they're the only organism that you need to know that is a pseudocoelomate. And what that means, remember, is that their GI tract does not have mesoderm around it to anchor the GI tract to the rest of the body or to allow for peristalsis. So its GI tract is not muscular, which means in order to digest stuff, it actually has to move around to get food down its GI tract, versus the earthworm, which can use its muscle contractions from the mesoderm around the endoderm to push food through its GI tract. It also only has longitudinal muscles, which means it can only retract its body lengthwise. So if this is a roundworm, it can retract the cells this way, so it moves like that. You can see it like wiggling this way, that way, this way, that way, this way, that way. It can't move with a pulsing motion like the earthworm, so it cannot do peristaltic movement. Cannot. So that's pretty much it. Pretty simple organism. I think the main purpose we want to learn about them is, number one, to have that pseudocoelomitic representative, and also to contrast two similar looking organisms, the annelid and the nematode, and see how they're different based on all these pretty advanced features in the annelid versus the simpler features in the nematode. Okay, finally, we're going to go over the arthropods. So they're these classically bug-like ecdyzoans. They have a hard chitinous shell or exoskeleton. It's reinforced by chitin. They're truly coelomitic. Remember, all other bilaterians are truly coelomitic, so they have true coeloms. Another vocabulary word to know is tagma or tagmata for plural. These are collections of different segments that group together to make a super segment that functions in a very specific way. So we'll deal with 3 segments in the very advanced or the very derived insects. So you have the head, sensory, right? It's got the antennae and like the eyes and the mouth. You have the thorax, which is locomotory. So it has wings, it has legs to allow the organism to move around. And finally, the abdomen, which has the reproductive structures, and it also has digestive structures. That's its main purpose. So you put these together and you get a full insect. The insect has both the head, or has all 3, head, thorax, and abdomen. In the spiders and the scorpions, the other chelicerates, and also the arthropod or the crustaceans, the head and the thorax become a cephalothorax, which has both legs and eyes. But it'll still have the abdomen as a separate tagma. So these are all tagmas, all right? Their feet are jointed to give them more rigid structure. It allows them to be a lot stronger and have more decisive movements. It can really support the body to rise up from the ground. And often they'll have complex life cycles, especially the insects, where you can go from like a caterpillar to a pupae to a fully winged adult, which looks nothing like the pupa or nothing like the larvae. One last thing, the shedding of the exoskeleton is called ecdysis, equals molting or shedding. Cool. Finally, we'll go over the crayfish dissection. Remember, so we'll start from here. You have the crayfish. This is the abdomen or the tail part. You cut the the ventral nerve cord right here. Then you cut through the abdomen. Then you cut along one of the sutures of the cephalothorax. Remove the head that has the digestive tract or the digestive glands, which release digestive juices. And we get here, the cross section here is you get the heart, the gills on the side, and the feet are attached to the gills. Okay, so let's quickly go over the different parts of the crayfish that Alice wants you to know. So, cephalothorax, remember, if you remove a walking leg, it's attached to a bunch of fluffy gills, which means when it walks around with its walking legs or pumps the walking legs, it'll flutter these gills around to allow water to go across it to improve oxygen exchange. What else? You have the head and the cephalothorax, the head, thorax, and then you have the abdomen. In the abdomen, you'll have little swimmerets on the bottom of the tail. These both function in, they help the lobster move around. They'll beat and kind of pass water through it like tiny little paddles. In addition, the females will have larger swimmerets to carry eggs, right? And they'll use to hold the eggs and then fan the eggs to give water movement across the eggs to get them oxygenated. The bottom of the tail, you'll have two of these uropods, which are the flukes of the tail, which, again, as they paddle around, gives some amount of movement. Especially lobsters, they'll curl their tail backwards and jet backwards really quickly. And that water movement is facilitated largely by these uropods. And in the middle is the telson, the middle vein of the tail. Again, this is all just memorization. And so the swimmerets from the bottom, swimmerets are on right here. The digestive gland, again, releases digestive juices. The heart, remember, you'll find that at the very top of the middle of your cephalothorax. What else? The gills are, again, attached to the feet. And I would say that's mostly what you need to know. Last thing, the large claws are called chilopods. Chilipeds. So those are important as well. Other than that, I would go and review the nematodes versus the annelids, how they're different, how they're similar, and how these different structures in the advanced annelids make them a more advanced animal than the nematodes. So advanced adaptations and how they're advanced, why they're advanced. Cool. With that, we'll move on to the deuterosomes.